everyone, welcome to Hedgehog Hollow. So today we have a new product review and I have a ton, probably like 10 different ways to use it for you. So we're using the new Distress Embossing Glaze from Tim Holtz at Ranger, and it comes in 12 base colors to start with. So we've got Cracked Pistachio, Broken China, Weathered Wood, Fossilized Amber, Tattered Rose, Fired Brick, Peeled Paint, this one's Hickory Smoke, Vintage Photo, Rusty Hinge, Walnut Stain, and Antique Linen. So they're your base 12 colours that we're starting out with. And we got one included in our VIP Ranger bag when you saw that breakfast we went to. So I'd already played with it, and Tim very kindly sent me a whole set of the new goodies to play with. So I want to share them with you. I think for this I used Vintage Photo, although it could have been Rusty Hinge. I'm not entirely sure. I'm going to go with Cracked Pistachio for the video because it's my ultimate favourite distress colour, apart from, yeah, maybe Walnut lipstick, I'm not sure. But I think Cracked Pistachio, particularly in oxides, is my absolute favourite. And so I'm going to show you today's techniques all with this. Okay, now let's open this up and make sure we're ready to go. Wonderful. Okay, so let's start with how it looks. So what I did was I just stamped a Tim Holtz tree, and I took my embossing ink pad and I literally just squidged it down over the top. Nothing special. I didn't have the embossing dauber at the time. I only just got that, which we'll be using today. But I just wanted to try out, like, how does it look if you put it over black. So that was that, and I took that to another level and made sure it was a bit more even, and that's it. So you can see that they are translucent, so you can see that colour in between. And the reason I've done it on a tag is so I can add it into my Inktoberfest tag. So every time I do these tags like Neon Amplify, whatever, I stick it in here and I keep getting a bigger and bigger ring. If you didn't join us for Inktoberfest, we do it every year. This will be our 3rd year in October. But you can go back and check out the playlist of the previous years and make those tags. And we use alcohol inks, and we use distress inks, and we use Simon Hurley's inks, and we use all sorts of different inks. Every day is a different technique or way to use ink. Okay. Then I wanted to share with you that, okay, so we can do that. We can stamp out an image. We can take our embossing ink pad, or in this case, we're going to try out this dauber. So this is just like a little paint thing. I have not used this. It's completely dry. So I'm just making sure it comes through. And what you'll feel is there's like a little piece inside. And we've mentioned this, how I'm an impatient crafter. So I'm kind of forcing it to go. There we go. So it's just wetting that sponge. But once it's wet that sponge, you can then kind of add ink onto anything. So here we've added on. And I want to make sure I've got some all over my page. It's clear, so the reason I'm looking at it from the side is just to see like where I've got my ink. But you can put this over a stencil. It's really good for that, rather than just having to squidge our pieces through. And then you sprinkle it on like embossing powder. It's still pretty fine compared to embossing powder. Like, it's not like a UT or an ultra thick. And then you're going to take your heat gun and heat it. And you're going to see it's going to turn glossy and translucent. This is not the same as embossing powder. I tried doing the same thing with embossing powder and it just didn't react. There's obviously something in its chemicals that just change it. So, here we go. Like halfway down, if you can see the change. And I don't have any ink underneath, but look how vibrant that colour is. But it is still translucent if I had something underneath it. So I think that that's really cool because you get that vibrancy, but you get the translucency and you get the glossiness of the glaze. So you can see that. You can also build up the layers. So this one here, I did 2 layers. You can see where my embossing ink pad had more juice than others. But something I want to show you that's really cool is build up the layers so it's super thick. You see this one here? This down here is 4 layers of Distress Glaze. So it's literally take what we did here, add more embossing dauber over the top. I obviously can't see whether that's on there or not. I'm just going to assume. And whoops. Do that. Now, one thing I know that someone's going to say is, well, you can still add this on while the embossing powder is hot. Yes, you can. And you could sprinkle in different colors too. So I'll show you what I mean by that. The reason I like doing the dauber in between is it just means that things are not so hot. I don't burn myself because I've totally done that. And if you want to do a larger area, it's harder to do it when it's hot. You can see the color intensity is building up. The other thing is just give it a couple of seconds between coats, because otherwise your ink pad will stick to it. Trust me from experience. So this is layer 3. So all I'm doing is building up layers, and I guess you could just keep going, but 4 layers totally works for what I'm going to show you. And what it does is it builds up almost like a glossy accent level of glaze over the top. So but of course in any color. And then you can, whoop, you see, didn't leave it to cool. So don't do that. Now I have nicely melted embossing dauber on top. Now I happen to know that this is really like the paint lids, and so I can just go and replace it, or I could use embossing ink. So I can fix that. I'll just get a new paint lid to go on it. But we're going to add on more glaze. And the great thing about this is I can totally fix it. Watch what happens now. When I heat this, it'll start evening itself back out. And if I added a couple of more coats, you wouldn't even know that I'd made the mistake, because yeah, I made the same mistake on that one, and I tried it and it worked out fine. But for the purposes of this, we're going to leave it as is. As I mentioned, you can go in and you can add in other fun colors. So if you reheat this and you want to add in some hickory smoke, so I'm just slitting my new packaging. So I'm just taking my seals off here. So what I have here is my craft spoon, and you can do this while it's still hot or just lightly reheat it. And I'm going to use this really cool feature on the Wagner of just like keeping it hot from underneath so it doesn't blow. And you can see how I'm heating it from underneath. And now you can see I have variegation in there. So I have different colors in there. And you can build that up with other, you know, kind of fun things. Build up all different colors and whatever you need to do. So that is that. But the really cool thing is when you get a few coats and you let it dry and you don't gum up your embossing dauber, what you can do, I'm just touching it to make sure it's still pretty hot, is we're going to crack it. So you can see like this, you see that really cool texture in there. So I did 4 layers and then I cracked it. So put it on my glass mat for a second. So all I literally am going to do is just bend and fold my cardstock. I also tried this on fabric and this worked too. I do all sorts of experiments in the craft room. But you can really crack it up just a little bit, or you can totally just go for it. There you go. And then you see it starts to open up other areas. And then what I did was I tried a couple of different things. You can distress it, or you can archival it. And of course the archival is much darker and it dries on the non-porous. I literally just dragged my archival over, took a piece of kitchen towel, and you can see it just sticks in there a little bit more. I'm going to lift that up so you can see. But it just really accentuates those cracks a little bit more. So use 1 coat solid over black. You can go to 2 coats and create a really fun background, or go up to like 4 coats or whatever you want to do and create some fun backgrounds. Let's just clean off my surface. Felt a bit gritty. Okay, what else can you do with Distress Glaze? Well, you can just take a water sprayer, spray the top, and there's only a few water droplets on here. You can probably barely see them, but then I can take my Distress Glaze just like this, and it won't do it any harm at all. I'm going to give it a good flick on the back, and you can see anywhere that there was water splatter. I also tried it, water dropper works too, is where it's going to stick to. So there's light mist, so I have like a light splatter, I have a big water droplet, And it's not blowing away, as you can see, as I dry it and heat it. And then you can create some really fun, like splattery, textured backgrounds. Put that as a water splatter over maybe an underwater scene, maybe over a mixed media scene. This one here, I did a more splattered water rather than a sprayed water. And again, just a different effect. So you can see, you know, different ideas that you can do. You can also just use it like an embossing ink. This is with Distress Embossing Ink. And so you can see it's just like a much more dynamic, I guess, embossing powder. But it's not UT. It's not as thick as UT. It's more fine. You can use it, you can see, like on water spritzes like this. So it's a really cool kind of medium in between. I also tried it just with regular Nuvo Clear Mark. Absolutely works. You can see. Works perfectly. And then the other options you have is you can put it over your oxide. So I stamped this with Distress Oxide and then used the glaze over the top on the pigment element of it. Absolutely works. I stamped with water and just got kind of a more dynamic. I thought if I built up a forest and these were in the front and these were in the back, or these were like snow-coated trees with one of the lighter colors, I think it would look amazing. Okay. And then the other new product he has are these embossing pens. So let's open these up so I can show you. And so they have two different tips. You get two in a pack. You get a brush tip and you get a bullet tip. So you can see here's your brush and here's your bullet. Your brush is really nice and flexible. So if you want to do hand lettering or a larger area, or you can do fine, just like I just wrote hello, really simply. And you can see there. So that's exactly how it comes out. So you can totally do those things. It has your Distress Embossing Ink in there, which if you have used it before, maybe you haven't, it has a slightly different reaction. It's not like a regular embossing ink. It has that distressy kind of feel to it. And then at the bottom here, I did a brush on a stamp. So let's recap all the different things we can do. So we can use the new Distress pens. You've got two ways there. Your third way is using that brush pen. You could use the bullet too, but the brush just covers more area on a stamp. You can use it over Distress Oxide. You can use it on water. You can, on your stamp, and then you can also just spray water and use it. So we're up to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ways already. And then my 7th way is the Distress Embossing Ink, or 8, you can do a regular clear mark. 9 is to build up all of those layers and then do this cracking technique. 10th, of course, you can just do a couple of layers and create like a fun background. For number 11, I'm going to add in the fact you can also do it over a solid stamp because it's nice and translucent. And my 12th I'm going to add in is my embossing dabber, and I'm so sorry, Tim, that I ruined it already. I know you can get extra dabber tips from when I had paints and things, so I'll be doing that. But yes, I made a bit of a boo-boo there. However, and it's even the thing I warned you not to do. I just was being impatient, and that's what happens when you're crafting. But there you go, 12 different ways to use those new Distress Glazes, 12 colors, 12 ways. Go check them all out. I cannot wait to see what you create. Be sure to tag me at the Hedgehog Hollow with your creations, and I love to see what you do with the tutorials in our video. If you enjoyed today's video, be sure to hit subscribe, ring the bell, thumbs up, and of course come back tomorrow for another tip, trick, tutorial or something else, and join that Hedgehog Hollow community below. I'll see you tomorrow. I can't wait to see you then. In the meantime, happy crafting and have a great day. Bye.